I am told by the screen that I'm live, and I'm happy to be here with you. Guys, let me know if you're having any trouble hearing me or getting this. So, okay. Anyway, welcome. Sorry that Tracy isn't here to greet you guys. There's always a totally different vibe about this when she's here. I'm seeing chats going up. Can someone just confirm to me that? All right, thank you. Thank you, Tim Tuba. This is going to be hard for me because I'm not used to, this is what Tracy does. She's the one who reads the comments going up and down. I usually ignore all that. I can't ignore that now. So I'm going to have to do this with you. And just to let you know, Tracy is not here because she's got a family thing. And it's not a catastrophe. It's not something horrible. Everyone's fine, but she has got to deal with a family situation and it is not here. So she's got to go there. And she may be another week. So I'm going to carry on without her. It's going to stink. I'm going to do intelligent disclosure probably tomorrow night without her. But she may join in. I just gave her the link. If she's able to tap on, she'll be here. Oh, and my phone just rang. That might actually be her. I should have had my phone silenced. And that is my wife. So she's going to hopefully come on in. I'm going to silence this phone. All righty. The other thing I just want to mention before I get into all of your excellent questions, and there's a lot of interesting stuff on the Greer Doty interview, which I just checked, and it's from 2016. But I just want to mention one bit of classified information on the Richard Olin Members site, and that is, of course, the progress of that which is known as the forum for RD members. And I will just say a couple of things. This thing, as far as I can tell, is just about ready to go. Also, we have had some outstanding people working on this forum. Thirdly, it looks amazing. Fourthly, it probably looks better than any other forum that is out there. From what I have seen, it looks vastly better, and it's cooler. It is more modern. It is just vastly more user friendly. It's going to be incredible. What was that? Third? That was the fourth point. Next point. I think, well, it's going to be moderated. Obviously, it has to be. And I am absolutely, totally confident in our moderators. But finally, one thing I just will say that gives me the ultimate confidence is that I know for sure that I personally will be making sure that I police that forum. And it's not that I don't trust all of the members of our site. I basically do. And you can just see by the quality of the outstanding comments that we have below posts. We don't really get trolls. We don't really even get a lot of scattered off-topic type comments like a lot of places will get. We don't really get that. The quality of the comments on the posts of this site are generally just amazing. 99+% of them, I would say. So I fully expect that will be the case with the forum as well. But, you know, I raised 2 kids. I was a baseball coach for many years. I will not tolerate trolls. I will not tolerate genuinely bad behavior. Free market for ideas. Absolutely. We all want that. I want that. You want that. But I also will make sure that this forum will be a really great place. And the cool thing about it, in my opinion, is it's not a wide open thing like Project Avalon or some other forum. This is only for our site. So it is enclosed. And frankly, I very much prefer that kind of a situation. And I have a feeling all of you will as well. So that's where we're at. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of growth along the way. Tracy and I are having a sit down with the people who really have been doing the lion's share work on this tomorrow, I believe, and we're going to go over all the details. And I have been particularly anxious for a long time to get this thing going. So I think we'll have something here. I'm seeing a comment. Michael is disappointed at Above Top Secret. I haven't been at Above Top Secret in a while, but I do use it. I mean, it pops up when I'm doing research, and I go there frequently. But a lot of these forums, they become toxic types of environments, and I really do not want that to happen here. It's very, very important to me, as I know it is to all of you. So at this point, I'm just excited, and I'm very confident, and I think we've got a great team, and I want this soon, and I know you do too. Oh, by the way, another thing you'll notice is on the stream here, I'm not using Google Hangouts. So this is a YouTube thing, but this is powered by a company called StreamYard, and this is new. I just was told about them this morning, did some trial runs, some practice, and I think they work pretty well. I'm going to use this until I find something better. I think there's a paid version of this. I'll probably end up ponying up the money for that, which I think will have some advantages. But there's a lot of things that I can do for this. I can do anything with Google Hangouts I can do with this, but I think I can do more with StreamYard as well. I had to move away from Hangouts because YouTube just got rid of the whole thing on August 1st, gone. And so there you go. Back home, did a lot of travel. Before I get to your questions, and I've got them here, I just want to say a couple of other personal things here about travel and about the very little amount of work that I've gotten done here. Where are my notes here? I've got all of your questions here. Let me just say, when I travel, I don't know how people like Stanton Friedman used to do it with all the travel that he did, or even Linda Moulton Howe. Like, to me, I'll be perfectly honest here, travel really drains me. Takes a lot of my energy out. It makes it difficult for me to get the work done that I always feel obligated to do. So we went to UK and Denmark for a little over 2 weeks recently, and I'm not regretting doing it. I'm very glad that we went. For a lot of you folks in the UK and Denmark, it was fabulous meeting you. But it is tiring physically and mentally, and it's very, very hard for me to get work done. When I was overseas with Tracy, I wrote a very, very large amount of my article on my Kit Green interview, which, by the way, I'm trying to wrap up earlier today. I'm very close to that. I'll talk about that in a minute too. But the point is, it's just very hard for me to get work done when I'm doing this type of travel. And I'm always torn because part of me wants to do the travel. It's a little bit fun. It can be very fun, right? Seeing new places, that's always good. There's a little bit of excitement, and I do learn. I learn a lot. But the other side of it is that it just takes a lot out of me physically. And just the other day, I flew to Boulder, Colorado, to Denver, and then just got a ride to Boulder for a Gaia shoot with George Norrie, which I did a little post on the other day, and that was fine. Ran into Grant Cameron, talked a little bit about that, but man, oh man, I really do not want to do any travel for a while. So I got to get some things done, and the way it is with me. I'm sure a lot of you are like this. When I'm not getting work done, I feel the stress. It really gets to me. It's very easy to gauge my mood. If I've gotten good work done, I'm going to be in a happy mood. If I feel like I'm getting things done, I'm going to be happy. If I feel like I'm getting stalled and things are not getting done, I'm going to be cranky as hell. So that's the other side of me. And I'm not at the cranky point yet, but I'm definitely at the stress point. I was happy this morning that I did some more cleanup on my article on Kit Green. Got to get that thing done. That's number one on my priority right now. So, cool. So there's a bunch of questions that you guys have. Let me look for them right here. Where the heck? That's not it. I've got too many open windows here. Here we go. Got it. So you guys are great. You gave a bunch of really cool questions. I'm going to jump right in though and just talk about the video that is on YouTube right now. I guess it was just published, although it was recorded 3 years ago. Interview by Stephen Greer, Dr. Greer of Richard Doty. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, there's a link below this post for the AMA. go check it. A couple of people, I think, have commented on it, and it is quite interesting. It's about an hour and a half long. It's really nice video quality. And as one of you mentioned, Doty, look, he's a former counterintelligence officer. He's famous for disinforming or at least misleading Paul Bennewitz back in the late 1970s. I thought that the interview was very interesting. I think Doty actually came across very well, as I think one or a couple of you mentioned. And here's the thing that I'll just say about all of that. There was a book written about the Bennewitz affair by Greg Bishop back in, I think, 2005, 2006, called Project Beta. And it's generally considered the definitive statement of the Bennewitz affair. Now, I would say a couple of things. A, I really like Greg Bishop very much. B, I really like his work quite a lot. He's very intelligent. He's a good researcher. But I have always taken issue with his fundamental conclusion about the Bennewitz affair. And in fact, if you're interested, you can go to Volume 2 of UFOs and the National Security State, and I lay this out in a much shorter amount of pages than what Greg does in his book. But I think at least 10, maybe 12 pages I spend on the Bennewitz affair. So what I would say is, this is what Doty said in the interview. All right. Bennewitz, yes, was tapping into he was seeing things that were relevant to an NSA classified program. That is true. However, it is also true, it appears to be true from everything that I've been able to learn, that Bennewitz was observing genuine UFOs as well over Kirtland Air Force Base in Manzano, that whole complex there. And, when I wrote about this back in 2009, when I published this, I was not working off of Richard Doty's information. I was working off of a lot of other information from genuine researchers, from Bruce Maccabee to Ron Regehr, and a lot of others who had firsthand information about what was going on at Kirtland. And it seems to me that Bennewitz was. And if you really listen to this interview that Doty gives, and starting at around, I think, 34 minutes, for more than 10 minutes or so, he's talking about Bennewitz. And I don't disbelieve what he's saying here, that he's saying exactly the same thing. He said, look, I did just let Paul go believe that he was dealing with ETs because it was easier. Paul really guided himself to the ET conclusion. This is something that we've heard for a long time anyway. I don't think this is something Doty just made up. But he allowed Bennewitz to go down that road rather than think he was dealing with some NSA thing. But that there were also genuine anomalous phenomena that they were all noticing. Doty, his fellow officers, Bennewitz, and yeah, I'm reading Robert McGuire's comment here. Doty said that they all noticed UAP following airplanes into Kirtland and Albuquerque Airport. Doty said it was shocking. Yeah, that kind of thing, exactly. And I would just point out, this isn't simply Richard Doty's statement. This is Doty and a lot of other people were making the same exact types of comments. So, yeah, go check it out. I think it's a very good interview. And one thing that you can do with these YouTube videos is you can download the transcript. If you go to, YouTube does this automatically, to the bottom of the video screen, and you'll see those 3 little dots just below the screen. And you do that, and the middle one option is open transcript. And if you do that, it will open up and you just can do a select all of those and paste that transcript into any open document. And there you go. It's actually really nice. It's useful. Paste that transcript into Hold on. I have my YouTube stream open here. Sorry about that. Okay, so I guess I'll leave that for now for Doty. If you guys have any other questions, I'll try to catch those. I'm looking at your let me just scroll here since you guys are writing here. So Jason says, or David says, hey Rich, most interesting tales you heard from the public on your travels. You've talked about a couple of interesting ones. Any more? Oh man. Let me think about that, David. Probably. One thing that I do is I never do this surreptitiously. So, but if someone's got something really interesting to tell me, I will ask them if I can just record it for my own purposes, because otherwise I forget everything. So I have a couple of interesting things that I do have, but top of my head, I can't remember. I'll have to come back to that. Tim says, comment, really enjoyed the interviews with Michael Schratt. His illustrations are incredible. Yes, and as a matter of fact, there's another one that I did with Michael that I haven't yet published. So I just need to clean that up a little bit. I was almost going to do it this morning. I just did not have time, but I'm going to try to do it tomorrow or Wednesday. So tomorrow I've got a live intelligent disclosure, which I'm doing solo, but I need to get that out. And then Jason says, I will never bust your chops about low productivity until I get my terminal diagnosis. Holy, don't say that, Jason. Don't scare me. Okay. So let me move on. Oh, hey, Tracy's here. Woo! Hello, my wife. I see her right in there. Okay, good. Let me keep going here. And I've got a bunch of your questions. I've got a couple from Mark H. They're both good questions. Let me just take a sip here. And I'm going to try to go through these efficiently. This is a good one. Mark writes, if the US or China or the Soviets made the breakthrough in propulsion, in visibility, free energy first, all right, would it be an inevitable conclusion that that particular state would immediately try and take over with the advanced weapons that went along with the discovery? So let me do that first. Well, it's interesting because I was just chatting with Michael Schratt about this very thing, and I don't remember if this is in the interview that I haven't yet published or if we have published it. His opinion is that the U.S. dominance is not going to be challenged, which took me a little bit off guard. He believes that the U.S. black budget is so far ahead of the Russians or the Chinese. He said, look, as far as space goes anyway, he believes they have no chance. And I thought that was a bit confident, but that's definitely his opinion. And Michael's in a not the worst position to know. This is his profession. It's not simply UFO research. I don't know how much at liberty I am to say about what he does professionally, but I will just say he's got a highly technical job and he knows what he's talking about in a lot of these areas dealing with military technology. So his opinion is that the U.S. is way, way, way out ahead of the rest of the guys. Now, I'm not as 100% sure. I think the U.S. black budget by itself probably does ensure that it's got the primary advantages. So that being said, the real key that the U.S. would presumably have is to prevent similar breakthroughs by the Russians or the Chinese or any other adversaries. Which leads me actually to the question that was asked by one of you other members on the Senate hearings on the Space Force. And forgive me if I can't remember who the person is, but he mentioned Senator Blumenthal's comments on, I'm scrolling here, on the dangers of space. It is quite shocking. Again, if you want to know where that link is, that's in one of the links below the post for this AMA. And I wrote a quick little answer, but I didn't really get into it. This senator who is, talking about this future Space Force and Senate hearings, basically said the public has no idea how dangerous the situation is out there and how advanced our adversaries are. Now, I assume he was talking about the Russians and the Chinese. So does he know something that we don't know? Well, I guess probably. But is he also just talking out of his backside, like a lot of these military people sometimes really do when they exaggerate foreign threats? No idea. Don't really know. But it is very interesting that they're having this discussion. So, so there's that. All right, let me go back to these questions. I'm scrolling to see if there's anything else that you guys have here. Man, you guys just keep going. You got to slow down so I can actually keep up with you. This is John. He says, Richard, I posted this question in the chat room, but do you think we'll ever get full disclosure about the findings in Antarctica? Oh, yeah, I have that on my list, John. I'll just handle it now. Or will it be too iconoclastic, love that word, for our tiny minds to handle? You're asking a question that I don't really know the full extent of how to answer this, because I'm not 100% sure of what I think is all that is going on in Antarctica. I'm inclined to think that there's probably something important there. I've been bombarded with so much disinformation and nonsense about Antarctica from a lot of individuals who have littered this field over in the last few years that it almost can make me really jaded when it comes to Antarctica. But I do recognize that there's very probably something important there. And there have been a couple of whistleblowers who have gotten my attention. So having said that, I would say this. Look, I do not believe that any secret will last forever. I just don't believe it. I think the day will come when these secrets do erode to a greater and greater extent. The phrase that I've been using more and more lately is toothpaste out of the tube. And I believe that this is happening. I think that there's more and more toothpaste that's coming out of the tube in these last 2 years. And, you know, when I wrote After Disclosure about a decade ago, it's 10 years ago, wow, with Bryce Zabel, I had a particular vision of how I thought disclosure would go down. And so what I guess I would say now is I've modified that. I think that there is still a lot of truth with how I was seeing it. So how I was seeing it back then was leak leading to avalanche, leading to revolution and topsy-turvy and everything being turned upside down in our world. You know, some unforeseen eventuality because A, I saw no motivation for the secret keepers to give up that secret, but B, I saw a world in constant revolution that would force something out. And so, you know, it's like the battle between the immovable, the irresistible force and the immovable object. Well, at a certain point, that object's going to move. And when I saw that object moving, I thought it would just cause an immediate avalanche, cascade, and so forth. So that's not exactly what is happening. But it doesn't invalidate the idea of an avalanche. So what's happening right now is an insider, and I think we can call this an insider disclosure. I don't think what we're calling this is the highest level insider disclosure. I don't see these people in TTSA as the highest level of insiders. I see them as mid-level guys, basically, not highest level. But they're high. And they have an agenda. And they've been able to acquire enough allies within the government to enable them to go as far as they've gone. Now, they don't have enough allies because they've only been able to declassify or get 3 videos declassified. It's not a whole lot. We know that there's more. So we know that there's resistance to what they're trying to do. So when I hear people saying that this is a CIA op, for example, I'm very unpersuaded by that. What I see is a lot of resistance. When Pentagon spokesperson Christopher Sherwood is going after Elizondo and saying he had nothing to do with the ATIP program, I see that as part of a struggle that's going on among factions. And as an aside, let me just say, I find it highly amusing that people who would never believe the CIA ever, anything that comes out of anyone associated with the CIA ever, they will kneel down and kiss the butt of the Pentagon spokesperson as someone who obviously is telling the truth at all times. Like, how do you go from never trusting the CIA to always trusting the Pentagon? Be that as it may, I see what's happening now in terms of our disclosure as I've called it controlled disclosure for a while, a controlled series of leaks. And David's saying maybe even they are not entirely filled in. I think that's exactly right. I think the TTSA guys are certainly not 100% filled in. There's no way that they are, in my view. And I only know this. I only, look, the one I'm always talking about is Puthoff, and he's the only one that I know personally. And I've spoken to him enough over the years, and I will simply say that man knows a lot, but I would be shocked if it turned out that he has been briefed on everything. I don't believe that. I don't think that's the case. So I think all of these people within that organization they've got their own clearances, they've got their own knowledge. I'm sure they've shared everything that they're able to share with each other, and they're working their way through. So I think that's the deal. But anyways, you're seeing an insider effort whereby they have been able to elicit a controlled leak of enough information to get some action within the mainstream media. And that's an amazing accomplishment, by the way. I said this to George Norrie just the other day in filming Beyond Belief, which is simply, people can bitch all they want about TTSA, but when I see what they've done something that I've not been able to do, that no one has been able to do over at least 50 plus years, which is generate a transformation of how mainstream media is covering UFOs. George Norrie wasn't able to do it. I wasn't able to do it. Grant Cameron wasn't able to do it. Stanton Friedman wasn't able to do it. Linda Moulton Howe wasn't able to. No one. They have. And it's kind of amazing. And like I tell Michael's right, why believe CIA? Because of a hatred of TDL. I've never understood why, though. What's TDL? You have to explain that. I'm not getting that. So, and I'm sure, like I'm going to get to your questions, by the way, because you have a lot of good questions. I will assume that there's always ulterior motives. And I'm also going to assume this, that if you're an elite that's got this information and, you know certain things about this that are disruptive, that would be disruptive to society. TDL's Tom DeLonge. Thank you. Yeah. And you realize that disclosure is an inevitability, but you don't want to, you still need to follow the CYA rule, and you don't want to lose your job. You don't want to have the pitchforks and the torches come after you in the event of disclosure. How do you do it? Well, you very carefully manage that process, right? So you're going to spin. You're going to release that information in such a way that it will benefit you to the maximum extent. Like, that's obvious. The way I've looked at this in the years past, and I should come back to this analogy. If you imagine all of the UFO knowledge that we have as a big mountain, or that they have as a big mountain, right? And if you have to disclose that information, it's very possible that we can just see them taking a sliver of that mountain and leaving all the rest. I think that's very likely what we are seeing. In fact, that's definitely what we're seeing. But that doesn't make them evil yet. I have, at least for my part, I'm willing to give them some time to take these baby steps, and we'll see how far they go with it. So that's where I'm at with those guys. I didn't intend or plan to talk about TTSA, but let me minimize some of my other screens here, and I'll get back to your totally awesome questions, dude. So let's see, minimize that. Okay, here we go. I have way too many open screens here. I have my Kit Green article staring right at me. I'll talk about that. Let me talk about that right now. So I interviewed Kit Green, about a month ago, right before Tracy and I left for the UK. It was just a matter of really crazy timing. Like, honestly, he approached me in early July, I think, about wanting to be interviewed by me. So that was very interesting. This was after all of the craziness came out about the alien autopsy email thread and so forth. So I thought, yes, I would absolutely love to interview you. And he said, look, on the record. So we'll do this on the record. I'm like, absolutely great. Love it. The problem was we were getting ready, like he was traveling and I was getting ready to travel, and making our schedules align, even for one afternoon for a telephone interview, was not the easiest thing in the world to arrange. And to my surprise, we were actually able to have an afternoon less than a week before we were flying to Manchester. So I did it. I interviewed him. Lousy phone connection at times and the whole thing. I got it recorded. And then to transcribe it took the rest of that week. And in fact, I finished that transcription, I think, one day before we flew. So I had no time really to do much of anything else. And then we go to Europe, and I very prematurely mentioned that I had interviewed Kit Green. That was my biggest mistake. I should not have mentioned that, because now everyone's like, okay, spell it. and the funny thing, and I can now say this, he and I misunderstood each other when I first did this interview, when we first agreed. So I had the assumption that he was fine with me publishing the transcript of the interview. He said, this is on the record. That was my assumption. That was not his assumption at all. So during the interview, he told me a number of things that turned out to be off the record. I didn't realize that at the time. Okay, fair enough. And it wasn't until I was writing back to him for corrections of the transcript that he realized I was going to publish this transcript. And he was like, no, you do not do that. So I was a little unhappy, but what we agreed is something that we're both happy with, which is that I'm doing this article, which is a very, like a lot of quotes of him and so forth. So it's a detailed, long article on what we discussed. There's a few things off the record. I will not violate that trust. But what I can tell you is he and I plan to do additional communications, some of which will be on the record, some of which will be off the record. So the things that are on the record, I will be allowed to attribute to him. Things that are off the record, I will be okay. He's okay with me saying it, but without attribution to him. So when I say certain things in the future and they're not attributed, it might be from him, it might be from someone else. I do talk to other people who do not want attribution. But anyway, that's where we are at. So I'm this close to having the article done. And I think this week I should absolutely have it out and published. This is not going to be a members only article. I can't. It's too big for that. So I have to publish it. I'm going to get it out there and let the world do their contortions once it's out. This gives me an opportunity to answer another question that one of you have relating to the Wilson document. And I just want to get the correct. It actually made me a little sad. Here we go. Timo Rosenfeld. And Timo, you've been a member for a while, and it's always great to have you around. But this made me sad. So Timo writes, what makes you think the Wilson leaks will not have the same fate as MJ12? Huge disagreement as to either authenticity or interpretation, and little further progress on that subject for years to come. How are the Wilson leaks different from MJ12? The only reason it made me sad is that there are people who really believe that the Wilson leaks are not authenticated or not legit. And, you know, there's only so many times I can roll my eyes. There are people out there, and I am refusing to give them the dignity of me mentioning them by name, who are so bad, so unprofessional, and I'm just going to leave it at that, who are arguing that this is a hoax. Well, one thing I can tell you is, all right, so why do I not think that they're a hoax? A couple of reasons. I can't mention everyone's name. This hampers me because I made certain promises, but I'm going to just say it again. All right. I was shown 2 pages of those documents in 2006 by a source very close to the source. It is an impeccable source. I was shown 2 of those pages, including the statement by Wilson that this was not made by human hands, not made by man. I've never forgotten it. It was in late 2006. I have talked about it ever since. Now, I am not the only person who has seen those documents. There's a very professional journalist who has also seen them, who does not want to be named. There are a number of other researchers who have known about this. When I asked Hal Puthoff for a statement about the authenticity of this, I would encourage you to read carefully his no comment. Ditto the no comment by Eric Davis. And ditto the it's not a no comment actually. Ditto the statement by Kit Green. And I'm allowed to mention this, so let me just pull it up again. I'm going to do this right now, and in fact, I can share this screen with you. I'm going to share both of these screens. I've learned how to do this here. So, all right, let me do this. Hold on. Now, I'm learning this here in this little system. So we're going to share screen. Yes. All right, don't show these tips again. Fine. Application window. There we go. Boom. This is my recent keynote address. So you're looking at Hal Puthoff, no comment. This is from June 12th. And he just writes, and again, I want you very carefully to read this language. With regard to authenticity, we have no comment on the documents recently being circulated, as some of us still retain U.S. government security clearances and remain bound by the secrecy oaths we have taken. We believe it is in the best interests of the U.S. government and ourselves not to comment on any documents that purport to describe classified U.S. government programs or information. Best regards, Hal. He could have just said, no, they're bogus. No, it's ridiculous. No, he gives me this very legalistic, lawyerly statement. And I want to now show you Kit Green's statement. This is even better. This is from the day we did our interview, July 11th. So I asked him, first of all, I asked him about the Santilli, the alien autopsy email thread, if that was legitimate. And he said, that's absolutely authentic. So I just want to make that very clear, and that will be published very soon. So Kit Green gives his absolute seal of approval and of authenticity of the alien autopsy email thread. I think that's very significant because they were all released together. The alien autopsy thread and the Wilson document. So you've got Kit Green saying the one is legit. Now I asked him about the Wilson document. I said, hey, I know you're not in the Wilson document, but you have a comment on it. And this is exactly what he said. I have agreed on the record that I have no authority to confirm that it is a legitimate memo because, in fact, the fact that I've seen it, the fact that I think one thing doesn't give me the authority to declare its provenance as legitimate. I can't do that, so I won't say that. Then he said, I'll give you a personal off-the-record statement. And I said, okay, I'd like to hear it. And then he gave me his personal, very off-the-record statement. And I said, am I allowed to state that you gave me a personal off-the-record statement? And he said, yes. And so that's what I'm doing. He gave me a personal off-the-record statement that is very different from the on-the-record statement. So there you go. Look, there's more in Edgar Mitchell's papers that I believe will come out. I'm not privy. I'm not on the inside of all that. However, I believe that there will probably be more that comes out. So, you know, as far as with the Wilson thing, the other thing that I would just say is that there are people, there's folks on the Reddit forums I know and probably elsewhere who are doing detailed forensic analysis, as it were, of the information in those documents. And, you know, They're not coming up with contradictions. They're coming up with confirmations. Now, Mark H. writes, Kit Green in 2001, quote, "The alien autopsy film video is real. The alien cadaver is real." Yeah, that's right. So my whole article is really about that statement and about Kit Green's briefing at the Pentagon in 1987-88. I guess what I can just say here for you guys in advance of publishing the article is what he says is not going to satisfy the people trying to debunk the alien autopsy video. They're not going to be satisfied with him. He's now saying, yes, I believe that was a hoax. He says, I believe that for a long time. However, there are complications with what he says. And these complications are not, I don't see a way to get rid of them easily. So what he maintains, it's one thing to look at a 2001 email thread with a bunch of smart guys who've got security clearances, and they're talking very seriously about whether the Santilli film is real or not. Like, that's interesting, but that's not a slam dunk for anything, because as smart as they are, they could be wrong. It's just their opinion, and you can dismiss it or you can accept it and take it as you want. But what's interesting is where Green says, no, I was briefed in 87 or 88 at the Pentagon, which, by the way, I asked him, can you nail it down? Is it 87 or 88? He says, well, I've got the files in my office. I just haven't gone through them. So I don't know why he hasn't done that. But what he says is, I was brought into a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. That's a big deal. In the Pentagon, he describes where it was in the Pentagon, and all that's going to be out in the article. And this is a briefing. He sees the briefing officer who says, yes, you are cleared to be in here. I see that your name is on this list, so I'm bringing you in here. And they give a briefing. He gives a briefing to Kit Green. And Green is shown autopsy reports and still images. The autopsy reports were presumably about aliens. And this is what he believed at the time. And the still images were what he believed were the alien body. Now, so that's we'll say 87 or 88, 7, we'll say 7 years later, maybe 8 years later, the Santilli film comes out in 1995. According to the official story, we're talking, Philip Mantle has done most of the work on this, and other people. Santilli and Spiros Malaris conceived, like, they created this in 1995. And nothing was earlier than that. So the problem that they have is, what Philip has said to me is that it would be impossible for Kit Green to have seen anything like that in 87 because it didn't exist. My answer is, well, don't talk to me about this. Talk to Kit Green. What do you want me to say? All right, don't shoot the messenger. So when I interviewed Kit Green about this, his statement was, well, I don't want to give too much of this away because this article is going to come out, but what he says is very interesting. And there are certain things that he has not backed away from relating to what he claims to have seen in 87 or 88. All right. He believes that he was hoaxed at the Pentagon, that he was the victim of a specific type of disinformation, even though he was high-level CIA briefing officer, intelligence officer. This is a Pentagon briefing. He says this kind of thing actually does happen, and he explains it in the interview, and I try to do a good job writing about it. And that's where we're at. So it's just, it's going to be a real messy situation when it comes out. But for me, here's why none of this bothers me. Hey, I don't really have any skin in this game. Wherever people come down on the alien autopsy video, I don't really have a strong emotional draw one way or the other. I like to see the argument on this. I like to see the discussion. And I do like to see some people become very uncomfortable when their sacred truths are challenged. And this is not to say that I think the Santilli film is real. I don't think anyone believes the Santilli film is real. Now, Grant Cameron is pointing out that a small portion of that, a small number of frames, are very possibly real. And so Jay's asking here a question. There was recently an old Kit Green post from 2007 unearthed, by Grant, that said no abductions ever, without much context. Did you ever get any clarity from Green about this in your recent conversation? Seems odd. I agree. And no, we did not discuss that, but I intend to talk with him again about that because I find it interesting as well. So, good God, man. But none of this really bothers me. So my goal is to get this article done, get it out, and then do more interesting work behind the scenes because there's a lot more going on. I will say, when I met with Grant again, so I met with him, had a great meeting with him in Manchester, UK. That was awesome. And that interview, which Tracy totally arranged, that's 100% her doing, and also Desta, they arranged it, and we had a great interview. That was awesome. So I had a nice meeting with Grant and my friend, Sid Goldberg, who was my old producer at Gaia. We sat down and we talked a lot about all this stuff right here. So I don't want to give any of Grant's information away, but I will just say he's got a lot that he's working on, and there's even more that he knows about that is interesting. Very, very interesting. So I think there's a lot more research that is going to be coming out on that subject. And I, for one, really want to see it come out soon. So Mark H says it's a core secret. All right. So let me keep going here. How are we doing for time? Wow. Are you kidding me? It's 47 minutes already? Come on. All right. Let's see here. All right. This is John's question on Greer and Doty. We just did that one. Good. Oh, here's another one of Mark's. Let's see. I recently watched The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original one, and while listening to the commentary, became aware that the writer of the short story actually had the robots in charge of the universe. Now, I know you're afraid of AI, 5G, etc., and you have broken the collab room on more than one occasion. Would being taken over by AI be such a bad thing? Can you see the positives ever outweighing the negatives? Lol. Yeah, some people do see it. I mean, we've got a very messed up situation in so many ways. We all know this. We're not good at managing our resources equitably or even fairly. We're not good at not killing each other. We're not good at a lot of things. And we have an exceptionally corrupt political system, an exceptionally corrupt economic financial system. So is it possible that someone could develop a very powerful AI could develop that would police us all and make us be good to each other? I mean, that's the ultimate, that's a Deus Ex Machina, if there ever was one, right? Deus Ex Machina, for those of you who don't know, that's the old from the medieval plays where at the end of the story, God would come down in a machine, be wheeled down, someone portraying God to save the day. Deus, God, Ex Machina in the machine. And so it's like the, let's fix everything at the end. And the AI would be our Deus Ex Machina. And, that would be nice, maybe. I don't really know. Like, what I think we're looking at is an AI. AI, I think we're starting to understand, is not just some objective intelligence. It could very well be guided by the intelligence that creates it. And that could be for very nefarious purposes. Like, there's no reason necessarily that we should assume an AI will be ethical based on our standards of ethics. So I don't know. It's a big unknown. I guess that's why they call it the singularity, because it is singular and we don't really know how to predict it. So let me read this one here. I didn't write down who wrote this one, so forgive me. It says, hi, Richard. Over the years, there's been this struggle within the government, DOD, MJ12, whoever, to disclose or not to disclose. Are we to believe then at this stage in history, the faction wanting to disclose outweighs, for one reason or another, the faction to prevent disclosure? Or is it for more of a pragmatic reason? The advent of technology in individual hands, recent boom in space race, it is inevitable the general public will be flung unwillingly into disclosure, and the powers that be want to control the situation. He goes on and says, nice thought. Do you think there will come a day when kindergarten to high school kids will be handling around metamaterials, getting a lecture from their teachers on aliens and UFOs? Where do you think your name will be mentioned in said hypothetical lecture, and for what reasons? Well, okay. So let me do the first one first. Are we at a point in history where the need or the desire to disclose will outweigh the desire to prevent disclosure? Well, I think in the opinion of some individuals, the answer is probably yes. I think I've mentioned this before to you guys, but I've mentioned only occasionally in public, but I have mentioned many years ago, I had a conversation with a gentleman who I think had very good reason to know about these matters, and said to me, he said, look, every 5 or 10 years, there are meetings at very high levels to discuss the pragmatic, likelihood of doing a UFO disclosure. So in other words, what this gentleman said to me is that it comes up and has come up on a regular basis and is always swatted down. Now, this was told to me more than a decade ago. This gentleman said to me that he was on I guess you'd call a subcommittee dealing with certain issues. And in fact, even though he wasn't a lawyer, he was on a legal subcommittee, go figure. And the idea was what would be the legal implications of disclosure. So long before I wrote AD After Disclosure, these individuals were thinking about these exact issues. And he said their conclusion was that the lawsuits alone would be prohibitive for doing disclosure. And I think I've mentioned this before. But anyway, my point is the factions then, or the decision makers then, clearly decided the disadvantages outweigh the advantages. What I believe is that our technological movement and therefore our social and political transformation, and we are changing in all of these ways as a society, are creating a very unstable situation in which this secret is more and more easily able to spill out in one way or another. So yes, I do personally believe that someone has made the decision that we're going to control this disclosure. We do not want a non-controlled disclosure. So that will inevitably mean disclosing some information and withholding other information. No question in my mind that that's going to happen. But the problem is, how successful in the long run is that strategy going to be? I mean, ask yourself this. I've been saying this lately. I think the UFO subject, it's not a tame subject. It's a wild subject. So that you may think that you can control this bucking bronco for a while with a limited disclosure process. But by its very nature, I think this is a difficult subject to disclose. And this is where I think my interpretation from After Disclosure from 10 years ago is still probably valid, which is that we are very likely to get to a point where enough information comes out, it can create a critical mass, as it were. And then once that happens, could things speed up very, very rapidly? And I think that's going to happen. There's one other factor to keep in mind here, which is the increasing level of control over our digital world here by governments and by intelligence agencies that are working with governments and working with Facebook. Facebook's news, which, by the way, they're now going to buy off all of the going broke news services to pay them enough money to take their news and put it on Facebook feed. But Facebook is, in their news, they're governed by an organization called the Atlantic Council. And look these guys up. They are neoconservative to the max. I know there's a couple of people on our site who really do believe that the Russians are behind all the evil in this world. Sorry that I do not agree with you there. I do believe that the Atlantic Council will continue, and other groups like them, to manipulate the news that ordinary people are getting through Facebook and through other platforms in a way that serves their interests. So I guess what I'm saying is we're moving into a world where digitally, through Google, through YouTube deplatforming, through Facebook, and all the other services are becoming overtly censorious now. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. It's out in the open. So the question that we need to be asking is, what is going to be stronger? That censorship or the force of the out-of-control UFO reality? And I don't know if I have an answer to that. I tend to think that the UFO truth is going to win out in the long run, but that's just my guess at this point. Let me keep scrolling down here. I've got some really good questions. And good question at the bottom by David. Who's giving the okay to release stuff to TTSA? I've been trying to figure that out myself, David, and I don't know the answer to it. I asked Hal Puthoff, and he gives me straight answers at times, and then he gives me gobbledygook, and on this occasion, he just gave me total gobbledygook. So I'll come back to that and try to find out. But someone, and what I was asking specifically is who gave you the green light to talk about your metamaterial lecture in June of 2018? That's a heck of a lecture. And he didn't really give me a proper answer, gave me vagaries. So, and the other question is, where do I think will people talk about me in the future? I have no idea. Probably not. I think probably not. And I mean, when you look at what fame is, any kind of fame, one thing you have to ask yourself is fame for how long? So fame for 10 years, sure. I'll be, after I die, whenever that is, hopefully in another 100 years from now, because I want to take reverse aging technology, right? No, seriously, whenever I'm gone. So will I be remembered for 10 years after I'm gone? Well, maybe, yes, probably. Will I be remembered for 50 years after I'm gone? Maybe within a certain small group of people. But, as time goes by, that group becomes smaller and smaller. So I doubt that. I don't think I'll be that famous. That's just my opinion. And look, my guy on this is always Marcus Aurelius. And if you have not read the Meditations of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, download it to your Kindle or just go order it. Get it at your local bookstore. It's a gem. In fact, it's been too long since I've read it. It's been maybe close to a year. So I need to get back to my Marcus Aurelius. I've been reading him for 35 years. He talks about this. So he talks about he's like, why do you care about what all these people think about you? They don't even know themselves, much less someone in another part of the world in a vast succession of very short lives where all of this is going to be forgotten anyway. Like, what are you worried about? That's what he would say to himself. And I think it's very good advice. Like, no matter what it is that we're dealing with in our lives, whatever the difficulties of people who may not like us or may not like what we say, and I have to deal with that. I'm normally pretty good at handling that, and that attitude is probably the biggest reason why I don't. People who may want to come after me, I don't think it's because they dislike me as a person. To them, I'm a symbol, and usually an inaccurate symbol, as most symbols are, and they use that symbol for their own particular purposes, which is a shame, because when you're dealing with someone as a symbol, you're really not dealing with what they actually say, and you're not really communicating. All right, a couple of other things here. Oh, this is there's one by Eric Karch and there's one by Susie Russell, and I want to read both of these. So Eric says, this is off the beaten path, and Tracy should be here for this. He says, hi, Richard. Glad you and Tracy had a safe trip across the pond. I've been doing some reading and YouTube watching lately on the Akashic Records. I remember seeing an episode on this on Ancient Aliens a while back, and I was wondering how you feel about the subject. I don't know what to think of it. This would be a good question for Tracy also to get her opinion. But she's not here, so I'm going to give you my take. Yeah, I think we probably all have heard of what the Akashic Records are. I don't. The long answer, the short answer is I don't really know, and I'm not sure that I feel a need to proclaim one way or the other on this. I will tell you, I'm not speaking for Tracy, but I'm speaking for at least one of my family members who strongly believes in them. And I've had other very, good, close friends who I respect who also believe in them. And what I would like to do, it occurred to me earlier today when I read this question, that the thing that would satisfy me would be to find the original first source written comment on the Akashic Records anywhere. It's got to be a first. And I would, if any of you know, write it below the post, because, or put it in the chat here, because I'm gonna take this chat and put it below the post when we're done. But to me, that's a good thing to do. Like in any kind of research issue on the web, I like to know, when did a particular claim first appear? And now, we've had 25 plus years of the web. So it's actually, you can do that. You can actually do chronological searches on the web. And often you have a pretty good chance of finding the exact source of when a claim or statement appears for the first time. And I would like to do that for the Akashic Records. And that wouldn't prove one way or the other what I think about it, but it would help me probably make a decision on how legit I think it is. In terms of just the theory of it, this storehouse of all knowledge that's available to all people. Here's one thing that I would say in favor of it, which is, my many conversations with Tracy about remote viewing and with folks like Russell Targ, which, by the way, I noticed one of you commented on that interview, which was great. There's something that we are tapping into. So, for example, ask yourself a question. Why does coordinate remote viewing work? Latitude, longitude, remote viewing. So someone gives you a piece of paper in a sealed envelope with exact latitude and longitude coordinates. And you do not open the envelope. And you are able to see or detect what is in that envelope. So seriously, all right, how is that possible, right? Because why would latitude and longitude have any logic whatsoever in a situation like that? And yet it works. Or at least this is what all the remote viewing testimony tells us, and I believe it. And you don't even need latitude, longitude. You could just have an X and put your intention in the X. Like, that's insane. And so the fact that a remote viewer can do this tells me that there is an organizing principle of some sort that's beyond these brains of ours. And, well, what is more logical than a massive storehouse of all knowledge that we actually have some uncanny ability in some way to tap into? Like, I can't explain how that ought to be possible. Makes no sense whatsoever, unless you posit we're in a highly detailed holographic universe simulation of some sort created by some teenage interdimensional genius for his science project. I don't know, maybe that's what we are. Or God, right? Or some meta intelligence, which is sometimes what I like to call it. That, and all the information's there. Like, are we just walking through our lives in a predetermined manner? Is there a destiny for each one of us? I mean, these are questions that, we just keep coming back to over and over and over again. And I don't really have a definitive answer to it, but I love the question. So thanks for asking it, Eric. And the last question that I have here, pre-question, is from Susie. Pre-question meaning it was asked before we started. So Susie writes, okay, Susie, come on, you honey dripper. She says some nice things here. Richard, I think most of us here tonight would agree you are arguably the best researcher in the field today. Thank you. You provide us with fascinating and insightful historical detail. And she says other nice things here about what I do, my wide-ranging information and so forth. Thank you, Susie. Appreciate that. However, there is always a but coming. If I was asked to reveal your personal thoughts and theories relating to the UFO phenomenon, where they originate, why they're here, how long they've been here, do they intervene in our evolution, etc., I would not know how to answer. So please tell us. Susie. All right. Thank you, Susie. Appreciate that. All of that. That was really nice. Well, I guess what I would say is there's an active universe with a lot of life out there, and we're interesting enough to them. This is what I have believed for a while. I think that probably we've been monitored for a long time. This is not the opinion of Chris Aubeck, who I recently was chatting with in Denmark, who is very much an expert on early UFO sightings, but he doesn't believe that. But I do. I think that it makes more sense to me than not. A couple of these are hypothetical situations. So hypothetical number one is that there's a lot of life in the universe. Whatever modern version of the Drake equation you want to create, I think it's probably a safe bet that there is a super abundance of life in this universe. And by that, a great abundance of technological life and a great abundance of technological life that is able to traverse great distances, whether dimensional or distance-wise or whatever. And, an ability over enough of a period of time to find us and to find us interesting. We are interesting. We're not just like little ants that have no consciousness. We have a lot of consciousness, and we have a lot of capability, and we have a great deal of potential on top of all of that. So I think that there would be intelligences that would find us interesting. Now, then it gets down to, is there evidence for this? And I suppose the evidence would be in the form of UFO sightings, both modern and ancient, and encounters. Some people, it all comes down to, how we interpret those encounters, but I think it's a legitimate interpretation that others have been here and they are watching us and find us interesting. So the real question is, to what extent, if any, have they manipulated us or controlled us? Or to what extent are we their property, as Charles Fort once opined? And I don't know that answer. I'm 57 years old. I've been studying this for 25 years, and I've thrown myself into it as much as anyone can throw themselves into it, and I don't have the answer to that one. So I'm just guessing here. What I can tell you is I think there are others that are here that find us interesting, that may or may not really care to have an open relationship with us. I'm guessing they don't care to, at least at this time. I think I mentioned when I was at Alien Con earlier this year with Tracy in LA, I met with an associate of mine who did a couple of interviews. And this is under a post. If you haven't seen it, scroll back. It says some really interesting stories from Alien Con or something like that. So this individual is someone that I know quite well. Very, very intelligent, perceptive man. And who, like all of us, has been obsessed with UFOs for a long time. And like a few of us, has been able to develop some very, very amazing connections with some well-plugged-in people from time to time. And one of these individuals is a high-level NASA official, very high level. I wrote about this. And none of these people are ever really interested or want to talk about the subject. The people who've had genuine interactions with it are all bound by secrecy protocols and classified law classifications and so forth. And they basically shut the conversation down. But if you push them to the wall, and they may say something to shut you up. And what this one guy said is, look, they're not going to be interested in us until we know how to get to the next star. And the way that my friend took that is, I think he took that at face value. Like, we're not interesting enough to anyone until we develop that type of capability. So, okay, that's all the pre-questions that I've written down. I'm scrolling around seeing what you guys have said here. So how many of you are here? I can't really tell, but it looks like a lot of you. All right. Wow. I've been going for a little over an hour. I should probably wrap this up soon. I'm just scrolling up. David Coleman says, Akashic Records explain everything, really. Wow. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about the Akashic Records. I would like to know when it was first referenced ever. Scrolling up, John M. writes about coordinate remote viewing. He says, yes, how is it possible? How did Ingo Swann end up remote viewing on the moon? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it's possible. And Mark says they need to watch the Dolan Show if they think we're not interesting. Thank you, Mark. All righty. Well, I guess this worked out pretty well. I mean, other than Tracy not being here, which I see my wife is still here. Hello, my beautiful wife. I'm glad you're still hanging around. Hope you're having a good time. I can catch you on the phone when we're done with this. How about that? If you've got any other last minute questions that I haven't answered, write them now, please. Jay King writes, question. Some of your closer and younger associates, i.e. Grant Cameron and James Iandoli, respect. Grant's older than me, but let me just say, okay. James is younger. And a noted, somewhat adversarial colleague, Dr. Greer, have been on kind of a CE5 kick lately. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, James Iandoli is a great guy. I really like James. He's in his early 30s. And he's a working stiff. He's got a family. He's got a job. Like he's got a life. But he is, like many of us, obsessed with this subject. And yes, he's really into CE5s. Grant is really into CE5s. Stephen Greer is really into CE5s. By the way, I'm not adversarial with Stephen Greer. I'm more or less neutral. I don't fight with Greer. I don't work with Stephen Greer. I think he and I, we've met each other. And, but anyway, the fact is, yeah, CE5s. Look, I'm not here to debunk any of that stuff. Not at all. The problem that I've had is the problem that I have not with the phenomenon, but with the culture that surrounds itself to the phenomenon. And it's always been my number one critique. I've whether it's New Age culture or some of the claims that people make about CE5s, which I do not always find credible. I think that there's real cultural issues and real cultural problems that have infiltrated the UFO field. And I don't mind saying this. I have a definite problem with many elements of New Age culture. And those problems seem to become more severe the older I get. So go figure. But yeah, I have a serious problem with it. I think it's been had a toxic effect in many ways in our society and definitely in the UFO field. It allowed, for example, cults like the Corey Good cult to arise. That could not have happened without the New Age culture dominating. So that's my biggest problem. But the phenomenon itself, issues of consciousness are very, very interesting to me. And as I like to tell people these days who think I'm a skeptic, I married a remote viewer, guys. How much of a skeptic could I be? So, not at all. Let's see what else we've got here. Mark says, oh, and then Jay says, and maybe even the recent Free study. Yeah, I actually am not. I'm not as impressed by the Free study as some people are. It's a big fat book. I really wish they'd footnoted that thing or at least indexed it. It's really tough to go through that thing. But it's the methodology that people should have a problem with, right? That whole study is done solely online. And I don't really feel that there's a lot of care that was taken to weed out or to be careful with the data that's coming in there. So I'm not particularly impressed by that, and I was very disheartened by the strident nature that the people themselves had in promoting that. If you look on the Amazon reviews, for example, their Amazon statement, they're acting as though like they've got the whole thing figured out and they've debunked, all the other theses about extraterrestrials. And I just think, no, you haven't debunked anything, not at all. So Jim Kroll writes, the CIA pushed the conspiracy concept to diffuse researches about JFK. Yep. Do you still see this at play with ufology? Jim, I see this at play everywhere. And for those of you who don't know, so back in, I think it was 1967, I've talked about this. I'll probably bring it up again. It's on at least one of our YouTube videos. The CIA, as far as anyone can tell, coined the phrase conspiracy theory. And they did it explicitly in the late 60s as a way to, as part of the suggestions of how to work with media to disable the theorists who were then arguing that the JFK assassination was a conspiracy. And they were talking about how dangerous these types of ideas were and how to deal with it. And we need to use our friends in media and so forth to kneecap those ideas. So yes, that's what they've done. Now, just recently, and this is something I'm going to talk about in more detail, maybe tomorrow night, actually, for intelligent disclosure, is the recent statement by the FBI from just over a week ago that they are investigating now certain conspiracy theories for criminal intent. And this is a new thing. So, all of this is related to a statement of a decade ago, the paper written by Cass Sunstein during the at the end of the Bush years or early Obama years on conspiracy theories and the need to disable conspiracy theories because they're dangerous and anti-government and so forth. We're in an era right now where this is becoming a real concern, and I think you all know, like, not a day goes by when I don't wonder, is the hammer going to come down on me in one way or another? It hasn't yet, other than minor little demonetizing here and there for YouTube. And now we have talked to some YouTube experts recently who are told Tracy and me that they're genuinely concerned that I'm in the YouTube crosshairs right now, that they know I'm a problem based on past behaviors of other videos, and that it's, they're just waiting for that hammer to come down on me and I'll be either deplatformed, demonetized, whatever. But I think without a doubt, within the next 5 years or so, like folks like me and other researchers, we're going to have to scramble and find other ways of getting our message out. David writes again, ironically, the term conspiracy theory was born of a genuine conspiracy. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you tell this to people and they're like, you're a conspiracy theorist. I'll probably close this real soon, but I'll just repeat a story that I have told from time to time. It was back in my days in the university when I still thought I wanted to teach it in a university setting. And I was a graduate student and popping down the hallway at Rush Rees Library at the University of Rochester. And I run into a professor who I was very friendly with, and I'd worked with him. And this is in 1994, I think. So in his hands, he was carrying a book by the author Gerald Posner called Case Closed, and it was why Oswald acted alone in the Kennedy assassination. Now, it just so happened that I had recently read that book. I had a friend who was a total mainstream believer, and he said, "You got to read this book. It's a great book. It lays out the whole case as to why Oswald acted on his own and killed Kennedy." So even then, I was very much on board with the whole Kennedy conspiracy thing. I knew nothing about UFOs, but I knew a little bit about the Kennedy thing. So I said, all right, I'll read this book. And I read the whole book. And so now I'm running into this professor. And I said, oh, I see you've got that book. I said, you realize that that book's a piece of crap, right? Exact words. This is what happens when you're 32 years old and you don't know any better. So he chuckles, you know, and he says, no, actually, it's a really great book. And I said, no, it's actually not a great book. And I listed off the top of my head 5 reasons why that book sucked so badly. Among them being, first of all, he's not even a historian. He's just a lawyer. And you can see he's arguing his case like any attorney does to misrepresent and to smear characters and so forth. But there's much else that's really bad about that book. It is a pernicious book. So I'm going over this whole thing, and knowing me, I probably got into it. I probably got a little full head of steam there. And he says, oh, I see. You're a conspiracy theorist. Now, in 1994, I was standing there in that hallway, and I felt as though I were standing at the edge of a cliff. And if I were to take one step more, I'd fall off that cliff. And that would be the end of my prospective career in academia, which I still really wanted. So I got scared. Like, that simple statement scared the hell out of me. And I took a step back from the cliff and I laughed. I remember that. And we said something to basically defuse the whole thing, and we both moved on. But it left a chilling effect on me the whole rest of that day and the whole rest of that year and the whole rest of my life. Like, I realized this is serious. Like, this is the Department of History. It's not like we relied on government funding to do our research. We were much more intellectually independent than you would be in many science departments or many other departments that you have. You know, we really did, in theory, have that independence, but culturally, we were very constrained. So there you go. Okay, I think I'm probably going to say goodbye to you guys. I'm getting a little hungry, and I should probably put some dinner on for myself. Definitely have enjoyed this. I am going to have this video linked. Of course, it will be available for everyone in the post, and I'm going to copy and save all of the chats as well, I believe. So there you go. Hope everyone's enjoyed this. And again, I just want to mention, I want to thank, whenever they listen to this, the folks who are responsible for creating the super cool, awesome forum that we're going to have. They've done an amazing work on this. Tracy and I are moving ahead with this, and we're going to be talking with them probably tomorrow. They have done a magnificent job. You're really going to like what they've got going. It's fantastic. So, all right, everyone, I want to thank you all. And I haven't done a weekly wrap. I'm going to try to do that. I have so badly fallen off my schedule with all this travel. I am just starting to get my act together here. If I don't do the wrap today, I'll do it tomorrow early, but I'm going to try to get back to that Sunday schedule, which is really best for me. So everyone, thank you so much. Had a great time. And we're going to try to get back to this AMA once a month. We fell off that, but I think we can get back on to the monthly AMAs. So, all right, everyone, thanks so much. Have a great night.